Hi, my name is Martha Sienna and I'm from St. John's here in Port Hope. And for today's spiritual walk, I thought I would do something a little different. What I know best is history, and I have done some volunteer research for other committees that I sit with, and I thought I'd like to share that knowledge about some of our local churches and a very brief history of them that will take us on a short walk around Port Hope. So we're going to start on King Street with St. Mark's. We're going to go down Jacob's Ladder, up Walton to St. Paul's Presbyterian, to Pine Street to St. John's, and then down South Street to the Port Hope United Church. And I hope you'll join me on this journey of history through time and think about our community spaces and how in the past they were an integral part of the founding of Port Hope, what they meant to you in the past, and what they mean to us in the future going forward. So thank you for joining me on this walk. We're going to start at the front of St. Mark's. So I'm standing right now in front of St. Mark's Church here on King Street, and St. Mark's was actually the first church we know of to be constructed in Port Hope. Its original frame would have been just a simple wooden timber frame, one story, very plain square, rectangular building, and it was actually christened St. John's the Evangelist first. We know that the Anglicans were performing services in Port Hope as early as 1819. And the community of Port Hope grew rather quickly, and so did this church. It was expanded upon a number of times, and the congregation grew and grew until about 1855, when the population of Port Hope and the church's congregation had grown so large, it was determined that they needed a new, bigger location. And a space was located on Pine Street North, on the other side of town. The population of Port Hope had generally grown to the west, and so it was deemed that that would be the best place to service the congregation. This building was closed, but used mostly as a parish hall right up until 1871, at which point it was then closed permanently. But only a year later, parishioners were feeling like they really wanted their building back. It was a shame to have this building fall into disrepair. So they petitioned the diocese to reopen it, and then in 1873 it was rechristened and opened as St. Mark's Anglican Church. Unfortunately, it was gutted by a fire in 1925. You're going to find a theme throughout this walk of fires, unfortunately, gutting our beautiful historical buildings, but it was rebuilt. This church was very fortunate to have Sir Vincent Massey as one of its patrons for many years. He was famously Canada's first Canadian-born appointed Governor General. He and his wife were longtime members of the congregation, and were the reason that Queen Elizabeth II came through here on a tour in 1959 on her tour of Canada and North America. Sir Vincent Massey is actually interred here. There are no in-town burials anymore, so a special exemption was made for Sir Vincent Massey and his wife. There are still interments made of people's ashes, and other famous members in the graveyard here are Farley Mowat, Canada's prominent author. And so that's our conclusion here at St. Mark's. You can see the beautiful hall that was added onto the side here. And so next we're going to be crossing this street and going down, you see it here, Lentz Lane. And we'll meet you at our next location, St. Paul's Presbyterian. So you've made it this far up Walton Street. Stop and take a breath. And as you can see behind me, we have St. Paul's Cathedral here, the first Presbyterian. This Presbyterian church was the amalgamation of three congregations from the 19th century here in Port Hope, and this building behind me was erected in 1906. Its original bells still ring out regularly. It has a beautiful sanctuary with original wooden floors and wooden pews, as well as a beautiful balcony section. There have been restorations made in the sanctuary space, or behind the sanctuary space in the parish hall, and the children's Sunday school and balcony have been refurbished over the years. This church is one of the only churches to be conveniently placed next to, it's backwards in the film here, this is Ross Funeral Chapel, which has been operating in Port Hope for more than 150 years under various owners. And the two, the business and the church, I know, have enjoyed a long and fairly good relationship over the many, many years. So here we are now at St. John's the Evangelist on Pine Street. This church was the second Anglican church built here in Port Hope after the congregation simply had outgrown its location over on King Street. What makes this church also quite unique and different is that the parish hall is not directly connected to the church itself. There's a space in between, and that's because it wasn't really a parish hall. This building here was originally erected as a separate Sunday school. And it has also been beautifully preserved, as has the other church itself. And you can see where there probably would have been a bell right up there in that window to ring the kids to Sunday school. And then this church also has a beautiful residence for its minister right beside. When I was a little girl, I had piano lessons with the then minister's wife. And so our next church now that we're going to go to is the United Church here in Port Hope, and that will be our last stop on this tour through Port Hope's faithful spaces. So this is the last church on the spiritual walk I hope I've taken you on today. And this originally would have been constructed as the Methodist Church here in Port Hope, and today is known as the Port Hope United Church here on South Street. The Methodists were some of the first people to come and start preaching here in Port Hope, and we have records dating as early as 1813 that they were hosting services and congregations. The first building erected on this spot was in 1835, and where you see these triplicate windows right here at the front, there would have been one large church steeple going straight up, and then the building would have been built out on either side, which is sort of a unique design for that time period. That particular building was built and expanded upon twice in the intervening years to service the growing congregation. And the congregation had grown so large, they had formed a separate committee to consider actually building another church on the other side of the river, on the east side of town, to service the growing congregation. But then in 1874, there was a devastating fire which basically took the building down to the ground. And it was decided then that they should build a new building that could hold the capacity of their entire congregation. And this particular structure you now see was opened in 1876. And its first service, it held a record 1,500 people. And today it still has the capacity to hold the largest number of congregants in Port Hope. In 1925, the Methodist, Congregational, and large parts of the Presbyterian Church of Canada united to form what is known as the United Church of Canada.